Hello, everyone. Welcome everyone to this panel discussion. For those of you that are just joining, I would like to welcome you all. And before we can get into the discussion and to introduce the topic, I'd just like us to go through the house rules for all those that are joining us as participants. So for this panel discussion, just for the rules, please, as you join the discussion, please state your name in the chat box, the organization, the name of your organization, and where you're joining us from, the country where you're joining us from in the chat box. Secondly, if you'd like to ask a question, kindly add your questions in the chat box. To view the captioning in larger font or color, please refer to the stream text link provided in the chat box. Then also be reminded that there is live transcription at the bottom of the page, which is at the far right of the screen, which is written live transcription. That will have live transcription for you as an option for the captioning. So for now, I will encourage you all to enter your names, where you're calling us from, where you're dialing us from, and if you have questions, please enter in the live chat box. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon, morning, and evening for some of you. We're glad to have you all. So like I haven't introduced myself, I just went straight into the house rules. So my name is Katia Sakala. I'm dialing in from Lusaka, Zambia. I'm the regional head of programs for the Disabilities Rights Fund and the Disabilities Rights Advocacy Fund, DRF and DRF. I'll be the moderator for this session today. And since we have already gone through the house rules, like I said earlier, I'm encouraging all of you to participate through the chat box. The topic that we're discussing today is what works, resourcing organizations of persons with disabilities in the Global South to secure and implement Global Disability Summit commitments. So for this session, we have 9 speakers with us today, 2 from the UK and Norway, 3 from Asia, and 4 from Africa. So we have a lot of speakers today because we want you to hear straight from the voices of persons with disabilities that are on the ground, the people that are responsible for driving the change on the ground, as reflective of the DRF's participatory grant-making model. So DRF and DRF, for those of you that may not be familiar with the organization, it was formed specifically to resource organizations of persons with disabilities to lead advocacy in line with the CRPD, drawing on nothing about us without us. We have been a participatory grant maker from the first day and have persons with disabilities centered in all aspects of our work. As you hear today, our grant making, advocacy, and technical assistance strategies have supported organizations of persons with disabilities in leading powerful work with significant achievement. DRF funding has contributed to advancing Global Disability Summit advocacy in targeted countries of the Global South under the umbrella of the then Commonwealth Project with funding from FCDO, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. So far, we have supported 20 organizations that have benefited from this funding stream. And this includes 4 from Rwanda, 4 organizations in Rwanda, 2 organizations in Bangladesh, 4 organizations in Uganda, 3 in Malawi, 1 in Nigeria, and 2 in India, and 2 also in Ghana. This has contributed approximately to a total budget of $1,688,500 in funding towards these 20 organizations. And this also includes advocacy for the preparations of GDS 22, which we are now, which is now going on at the moment. DRF is proud to be associated with a success that has resulted in tangible advocacy results, some of which you will now hear about from the lined up speakers that will highlight the importance of trusting organizations of persons with disabilities, their leadership, knowledge of their local context, and taking the risk of funding emergent organizations. Our PUT fund is also always open for governments, donors, and other organizations to join. So for now, you will listen to our first speaker, Penny Ines, who is the head of disability inclusion for the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, FCDO. Penny Ines is the head of disability inclusion team in the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, and formerly in the Department for International Development, a post she has held since May 2017. She led the team responsible for organizing the Global Disability Summit in July 2018 and oversaw considerable progress on disability inclusion within FCDO. Penny has also previously worked as the deputy head of FCDO's Human Development, FCDO's lead on health, sexual and reproductive health, reproductive health and rights, water, sanitation and hygiene and nutrition policy. She has also led on multilateral effectiveness policy and results monitoring. Before joining FCDO, she was head of the profession for statistics in the Department for Constitutional Affairs and has also worked in the Department of Health. So today, Penny's role is, she's going to talk about UK's commitment to disability inclusion and to disability inclusive development, their continued support to OPDs through DRF and also their upcoming disability strategy. Over to you, Penny.
Thank you so much, Katia, for that introduction and for inviting me to speak today. It's so exciting to be part of the second Global Disability Summit, which is continuing the legacy from 2018. And I just want to pay particular tribute to our Norwegian and Ghanaian friends and the International Disability Alliance, who've worked really tirelessly on this event and have so much ambition to progress disability inclusion across the globe. As Katia said, I'm Penny Innes, head of the Disability Inclusion team in the UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. And we have so many wonderful partners to work with. And the Disability Rights Fund and the Disability Rights Advocacy Fund is definitely up there as an impressive organisation. And our relationship goes a long way back. We've seen the DRF grow from a small organisation with a staff of 2 people into a multi-million-dollar grant-making collaborative between global disability rights movement and donors. And this relationship is really important because there are limits to the kind of organisations that we as donors are able to support. With the Disability Rights Fund, we're able to fund incredible organisations that we would not be able to support otherwise. And you'll be hearing from some of them today, and I'm looking forward to hearing about their experiences. So the FCDO's support to the DRF participatory grant-making mechanism really does shift power, and it means that people with disabilities are more involved in decisions that affect their lives. So as Katia said, the FCDO is a relatively new organisation which was formed from the UK's Foreign Office and the Department for International Development. And it has a wide remit of diplomacy and development and a presence across the world. It has a really strong commitment to dignity and freedom so that people can exercise agency over their lives. And yesterday, our Minister, Vicky Ford, launched the FCDO's new Disability Inclusion and Rights Strategy, which sets out our ambition from now until 2030. And as we developed this new strategy, we were really keen to hear the views of people with disabilities. And we carried out a number of external consultations with over 100 organisations of people with disabilities, including 8 meetings in 5 countries, 4 regional workshops and a global consultation. And this was done with the help of many, many partners, including the DRF. And we are really grateful for all the support that we had. And the discussions were so valuable to us in shaping the strategy. So thank you to everybody involved. So the strategy includes new work on human rights, inclusive health and climate action, as well as the existing focus that we already had previously on inclusive education, economic empowerment, social protection and humanitarian action. And it identifies, and this is new, a new framing, it identifies 4 outcomes for people with disabilities, which we are framing as rights, voice, choice, and visibility. So we want to promote the rights of people with disabilities. We want to encourage their voice and participation, enable more choice and control, and create greater visibility through better data and evidence. So that's our framing of rights, voice, choice, and visibility. And one of the key messages from the consultations was the importance of supporting really grassroots organisations and women, girls, LGBT+ people, people with albinism, people with intellectual disabilities, deafblind people, people with psychosocial disabilities, and other groups who may not be represented and who can be marginalised from their communities and therefore not able to have the opportunities that they deserve. So our support to the DRF does allow us to start to reach these more marginalised groups, and I know that there is ambition to go further. Yesterday, the FCDO made 18 new commitments for action which underpin our strategy, and they include specific action as well as commitments to mainstream following the twin track approach in strategy, so specific as well as mainstreaming across the organisation. And one of those commitments is to develop and publish new guidance on meaningful consultation with people with disabilities that we will share across the organisation and encourage our colleagues to improve how they work with organisations of people with disabilities. And we really look forward to sharing that learning. We know that organisations of people with disabilities have a vital role in holding the international community to account for our collective promises. And we look forward to continuing to play our part in creating a vibrant, robust and powerful disability movement so that people with disabilities can exercise their rights, have a strong voice and a choice about how they live their lives and are visible in their communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Penny. It's pouring heavily in my background. Hope it won't disturb the call, but at the moment, I'm going to call upon Eva. So Eva Evans-Moore is a senior advisor for the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation. He's going to talk about the government of Norway's commitment to disability inclusive development and the inclusion of organizational persons with disabilities in decision-making spaces and their upcoming strategy as well. So Eva was the chief civil society advisor in NORAD's technical department from 2004 to 2015. He was then transferred to the human rights section where he worked until retirement in May 2020. He was re-engaged in August 2021 to assist with the preparations for the Global Disability Summit 2022. From his position in NORAD, he has advised the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, embassies, and NORAD's other departments on civil society issues, freedom of expression and media development and disability rights. Over the years, he has served in various professional assignments, including being Norway's representative to UNESCO's media program from 2011 to 2014, and representing NORAD in the Global Action on Disability Network since its start in December 2015. Eva, it's over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katja, for your kind introduction and for this exciting opportunity to speak. I've been told to say that again, that my name is Ivar and that I am from NORAD. Great to be here. Organization of people with disability should and must have the capacity to bring home to national governments, constituencies and local communities what the world has committed to here at GDS 2022. What can we do to assist them with this? Let me briefly say a little bit about what NORAD works. We have for decades worked through partnerships with development organizations. For instance, we have since 1981 supported the Atlas Alliance in capacity development of OPDs as a means to promote the rights and living conditions of persons with disability in the global south. NORAD has also partnered with many other Norwegian, international and local civil society organizations with the purpose to strengthen the disability rights movement globally. NORAD's collaboration with civil society organizations over the years has resulted in a growing awareness in the aid administration about the situation for persons with disability and their human rights. Our staff have been sensitized on the CRPD and other legal instruments and been trained in practical approaches, whether targeted or integrated efforts. The Atlas Alliance and other CSO have also advocated effectively to strengthen Norway's commitment to disability rights. As a consequence of this growing awareness of persons likely to be left behind in all aspects of realizing their rights, the Norwegian government launched in 2019 a call for proposal. The goal was to strengthen the capacity of development CSOs to support the human rights of persons with disabilities and their representative organizations. NORAD now provides actually close to $90 million to this thematic area for the period 2019-2022. Sudden increases in funding can backfire due to many pitfalls along the long way from a donor to grassroots activities. The response to this Norwegian call for proposals, as you already know, was the initiative called Together for Inclusion. It puts OPDs in North and South in the decision-making seats in partnerships with mainstream CSOs working in education, health, economic empowerment, and human rights. The question is, will TOFI eventually be followed by others? Because it's a smarter way to utilize organizational resources, stimulate local ownership, and produce better results? Well, we don't fully know. But yesterday we got an interesting news that the 6 largest humanitarian organizations in Norway announced that they have formed a new partnership with the Atlas Alliance for mutual learning, similar to the TOFI Partnership for Development Actors. The humanitarian budget is almost as big as our development budget, so this can potentially be very, very important. Yesterday, Norway's Prime Minister Støre announced the first ever Norwegian strategy for disability in international development, which will strengthen our collective efforts in this area. To foot the bill, 210 million Norwegian kroner, which is about $20 million, will be allocated to this over the next 3 years. And they will go into 6 priority areas, which I shall not use time to explain. We can do that later if you're interested. Today, I think we need a 2-track approach to capacitate OPDs. A track 1 to provide resources for OPDs to communication and campaigning for the outcomes of the GDS, and a track 2 for investments in organizational development. NORAD's experience is that these 2 approaches works best in tandem, and that partnerships between like-minded organizations in the global North and South is the best model for making long-term impact on society. Access to funding is of course crucial for OPDs. Legitimate demands for funds for immediate use should be complemented by resources for long-term organizational development. It's therefore encouraging to hear that more than 20% of all commitments we have received for the summit address capacity development of OPDs to enable meaningful engagement. I really hope that these commitments match our experiences and I mentioned 3 key things. that partnership must build on trust, but also on transparency and accountability. Second, it should be locally driven and address the need of both individual, organizational, and institutional capacities. And finally, organizational development through partnerships is the most genuine approach to help partners strengthen their advocacy and service deliveries in all types of activities and actors. So in other words, I think OD is a critical factor for meaningful participation by OPDs. If we succeed in this, a strong and vibrant global disability movement will sit in all necessary decision-making spaces together with global, national, and local authorities to make lasting change happen. I really hope so, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Eva, for that. Just as a reminder for everyone, please, if you have questions or comments, remember to put those comments in the chat box. You make use of the chat box for the comments and questions that you may have. So at this point, I'm going to invite Esther Chozira. Esther is the Chief Executive Officer of the National Union of Disabled Persons of Uganda, NUDIPU. She is a female with visual impairment and has worked with the disability movement since 2000. She has previously worked as the Program Officer for Disability Rights Fund in Uganda, responsible for overseeing its grant making to organizations of persons with disabilities, a position she held since from 2019 to 2021. She chaired the National Council for Persons with Disabilities from 2008 to 2012. Esther has a master's in human rights from Makerere University, a bachelor degree in arts with education from Makerere University, and a diploma in law from the Law Development Center, among other credentials. She's going to talk about Uganda's GDS advocacy efforts to secure commitments from their government and how these, to ensure these efforts are reflected in national level priorities and programs. Esther, over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Katia, for that wonderful introduction. And I'm glad to take the floor to speak about Uganda's experience about advocating for their commitments. NUDIP is an umbrella organization of persons with disabilities in Uganda, and we basically want to see a dignified life for persons with disabilities when they are living in dignity and prosperity. What worked for us in terms of engaging government as organizations of persons with disabilities in Uganda? With support from the Disability Rights Fund, NUDIPU was able to implement so many activities that enabled us as OPDs to, one, strengthen the capacity of the different organizations through information sharing regarding the GDS. This was both in 2018 and in 2022. This information sharing session helped us as NUDIPU to level the ground for the different organizations, including those that are marginalized, because we knew that we were at different levels of understanding what the GDS is, what it means, and what it implies in the lives of persons with disabilities. What we also did was to conduct a rapid survey, which informed us on the commitments that were made in 2018 and the kind of progress that was made in regard to the commitments of 2018. And we found it was about 50% implementation of the commitments. And this was because there was close collaboration between the different DPOs, government, and the other actors in the sector of disability. Then we also ensured that we built partnerships amongst the OPDs themselves, but also we linked up with different development partners, including Site Savers, Ad International, and many others that were having interest in ensuring that the commitments are actually implemented. And what did we gain out of these partnerships? What we gained out of the partnerships and from all the implementation we did was that, one, we were able to influence government to appoint focal persons in each ministry, department, and agency. And this was very helpful to us because we found ways that persons with disabilities could root their issues in those respective ministries. I'll just give an example. In the Ministry of ICT, we did not have a contact person there, but because of the commitments that were made in 2018, government was able to appoint a person in charge of disability, and that commissioner has been very supportive throughout the period to ensure that issues of disability are being worked on. Although there are still challenges, you cannot say that because we have a focal person, all is well. We were also able to, as a result of our engagement, were able to see the Persons with Disabilities Act of 2019 enacted. This was one of the laws that had been in Parliament for more than 10 years, but as a result of our engagement on the commitments, we were able to see government enact that law. And as we speak now, we are only waiting for the regulations to enforce the act. And in the same vein, we also engaged the Ministry of Health and Parliament to pass the Mental Health Act that supports issues of persons with mental disabilities in Uganda. And similarly, we influenced the process of reviewing the national policy on disability. This one is still ongoing, but as a result of the commitments, we're able to start the process, and we are sure that it will reach at some point. Still under policy, we have been engaging since 2018 on the inclusive education policy. This is a policy that has also taken long to be approved by cabinet, by government, and yet it is very critical in ensuring that children with disabilities access inclusive education, as is stipulated in the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. But we now have some smile on our faces because recently the top management of the ministry has seen this policy approved, and we are only waiting for the cabinet decision. On the side of economic empowerment, we were able to see the social programs being inclusive of persons with disabilities, and specifically the special grant budget was increased from 2 billion Uganda shillings to about 5 billion Uganda shillings. This is something that we had also demanded for several years, but it was not coming to pass because the special grant had been initiated in 2009, but we only saw this increment in 2019. So we still accredit this to the commitments of the GDS of 2019. As a result of the participation of organizations of persons with disabilities, we have been able to see several organizations, especially from the marginalized groups, becoming more and more stronger in a way that they're able to advocate for their rights. They're able now to be brought at the decision-making table. Some of these, I could just quickly say, like we have the association, the National Association of Persons with Cerebral Palsy, the Albinism Umbrella. These are pretty new and young organizations, but as a result of engagement on the Global Disability Summit commitments, we have been able to see them grow. And now some of them are part of some of these side events like this one we're having today.
Thank you so much, Esther. I think we will end here for now for a presentation. And please, if there'll be time at the end of this, we'll still get back to that. But I think we'll have to get to the next speaker. But thank you so much for those remarks. So our next speaker is Gaudence Mushimiana, a co-founder of the Organization of Women with Disabilities in Rwanda. So, Gaudence is a woman with disability who's a disability rights activist for nearly 20 years. She's also, besides being the executive director, she's also the co-founder of UNABU, the Rwandan Organization of Women with Disabilities, where she's leading efforts to end violence against women and girls with disabilities and ensure inclusive services for survivors. In her previous roles, she worked as a national coordinator for the African Decade for Persons with Disabilities, and also she has worked as deputy legal representative of the umbrella organization of fighting HIV/AIDS. She has also served as on the executive committee of the she's currently serving on the executive committee of the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum as the regional representative of women with disabilities, and was recently recognized as a woman of courage by the US ambassador to Rwanda in 2020. Gaudence is going to talk about the efforts to secure commitments from the government of Rwanda through partnerships with mainstream CSOs and concerted efforts of community mobilizers who are members or who are themselves women with disabilities. Gaudence, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Katia. I'm so glad to be part of this event, talking about the best ways to support organization of persons with disabilities. I might say flexible funding to emerging and small organizations of persons with disabilities significantly contributes to building inclusive and trustable disability movement to influence, secure, but also implement global disability commitment. Disability Rights Fund has been supporting one organization of women with disabilities since 2015 as the first funder ever with a budget of 10,000 USD. But today, UNABU annual budget and donor reach has expanded a tenfold. Our technical expertise to address gender-based violence has also equally grown, especially during the COVID pandemic, where we were able to share the result of a study that we conducted on the experience of women and girls with disabilities during the lockdown. From the small grant scheme, UNABU in 2019, of course, with the Disability Rights Fund, we dedicated our efforts to fostering coalitions, developed an alliance with the other civil society organizations, including Organization of Women, Haguruka, and this is a national women rights organization that focusing specifically on preventing and addressing gender-based violence. We also included in our coalition an organization focusing on legal aid forum to ensure that victims of violence, girls and women, can also access justice equally like others. And this is a forum that brings together 38 NGO, professional bodies, but also universities and law clinics that provide free services to marginalized groups. The coalition that we are working with, we organized ourselves to conduct a quick assessment on challenges that girls and women with disability are facing in navigating through justice system, but also we managed to train community mobilization volunteers, those are girls and women with disabilities, to make sure they understand the functioning of the justice system, but also they can identify gender-based violence cases and refer them to the Isange one-stop centers that support victims of violence in general. Rwanda only Global Disability Summit commitment on women with disabilities was to ensure that all Isange one-stop centers are supporting all victims of violence are accessible to ensure that also persons with disabilities, specifically girls and women, can also access justice and services within the same centers. But also the commitment talked about collecting disaggregated data based on gender and disabilities, because even though we know that persons with disabilities, specifically women, are victims of violence compared to others, we lack data on the situation. To get government ownership of its mandate to make the one-stop centers accessible and improve the collection of gender and disabilities disaggregated data, we partnered with the National Council of Persons with Disabilities, and this is a government agency responsible for disability, but also we developed an accessibility checklist to facilitate and encourage Isange one-stop centers self-assessment. Within our expertise, also we trained Isange one-stop centers, supporting victims of violence to ensure good understanding of the commitment itself, and of course, the ideal accessible Isange one-stop centers for better disability mainstreaming. As a result of the partnership, flexible partnership with Disabilities Rights Fund, partnership with other civil society organizations, but also partnership with government agencies, some of the key results of our coalition in advancing the implementation of Global Disability Summit commitment include that at least 39 Isange one-stop centers were trained, and they have, as of today, focal point dealing with disability mainstreaming. But also nearly 500 justice and GBV stakeholders were also trained on disability mainstreaming, but also how to handle different cases of person with disabilities. 35 community mobilization volunteers, girls and women with disabilities, were also trained to ensure they are supportive in the whole referral system to make sure that victims of violence, girls and women, can also access the available services in their communities. As of today, UNABU, in partnership with Disabilities Rights Fund, we managed to organize and empower 1,211 girls and women with disabilities, and these are organized in 56 community self-advocacy groups, but also partnership that connected UNABU to other partners like FCDO, UN Trust Fund, Amplify Change, Open IDEO, to name few, to serve today more than 10,000 women with disability in Rwanda across 12 districts.
Thank you
As
so
a
much.
lesson, yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Please, for more information on UNABU's work on the GDS advocacy, please look through the charts the links that have been shared in the charts, and for more information, we'll also share. So our next speaker is Albert Muller, who is the co-founder and executive director of Access Bangladesh Foundation. Albert Muller is a Ashoka Fellow who is leading organization of persons with disabilities, working since 2008 in Bangladesh. He has worked in the capacity of a consultant at the World Bank, ILO, Leonard Cheshire, American University, Bank Information Center, Action Aid Bangladesh, Bangladesh Business and Disability Network, and other development agencies. He has over 18 years of experience in disability, especially around the areas of economic empowerment, disability inclusive policy, plans and strategy development, research on disability issues, training and capacity building on disability inclusive skills and employment. He has led and conducted research on disability issues, and he holds a diploma in personnel management obtained from Bangladesh Institute of Management, MBA in finance at the Northern University of Bangladesh, and CBR and International Development at the Queen's University, Canada. So Albert is going to talk about the efforts of DRF-supported OPD coalition in Bangladesh to promote implementation of GDS 18 commitments and to secure commitments for 2022. Albert, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Katia, for your nice introduction. Dear ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Today, I would like to share our efforts of DRF-supported coalition in Bangladesh, working for promoting implementation of GDS commitment and to secure commitment for GDS 22. Access Bangladesh Foundation is a leading organization of persons with disabilities working in Bangladesh since 2008 in empowering people with disabilities. We six organizations, Access Bangladesh Foundation, DCF, NCDW, Sitakun Federation, Turning Point, and WDDF, working together with the support of Disability Rights Fund to promote implementation of Bangladesh government commitment made in the Global Disability Summit 2018, and also to secure commitment for GDS 22. We have some good work. with the support of Disability Rights Fund. Today, I want to share some of our major high-level advocacy which we did with the support of DRF. The lead ministry, Disability Lead Ministry, Ministry of Social Welfare, they assigned Access Bangladesh Foundation to draft the National Action Plan on Disability. So the organization Access Bangladesh Foundation, we arrange different consultation with OPD, international organizations, and other actors to draft, to review, and to draft the action plan. Finally, we drafted the second draft of action plan, and finally we arranged a national consultation with the 46 focal points of different ministries, and we submitted our action plan to the government. And the action plan passed by the government in January 2019. It was a great achievement from our work. And you know, after that, we arranged a different dissemination workshop among the government officials, and we did it in a very comprehensive way through DPO partners. So we disseminated among 236 government officials on the action plan. And we also arranged orientation for OPD, and a total of 123 OPD partners participated in the National Action Plan. You know that the action plan, now we are working how the government can implement the action plan. We work closely with the Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics to make the upcoming census inclusive for persons with disabilities. So we work closely with this agency, government agency, and as a result of our advocacy, the Ministry of Planning and the BBS, they accepted our recommendation, and they issued a formal letter to us stating that the questionnaire has been revised based on our recommendation. And they also added in the letter that, you know, they will engage Access Bangladesh Foundation to review the publicity materials, to review the training manual, and they will involve us to train the data enumerators. So this way, you know, we are doing some high-level advocacy. We are also active in doing some advocacy like, you know, how we can make the national budget inclusive for persons with disabilities. And also we are working closely with the government. And now I'd like to highlight some of the work we are doing. We did closely with the government, you know, to secure the commitment for GDS 22. So it was a good example, you know, the government, they invited us, and we took part in the consultation, and the government involved us in a very meaningful way. I also thank the FCDO Bangladesh team that with the support of their support, you know, the Bangladesh government, they ensured finally in the participatory consultation among the OPDs. And finally, the government, they submitted 11 very comprehensive commitment in the Global Disability Summit. So I would like to thank our FCDO Bangladesh team and Disability Rights Fund for supporting DPOs directly. And I also request our government to put more focus on implementation of the commitment which they submitted to this summit. And I also request to the development agency to support directly the OPDs, as they are the ultimate field forces to make changes. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Albert, for that. Our next speaker is Risnawati Utami, who is the founder of OHANA Indonesia and UNCRPD committee member. So Risna is the founder of ONAHA, which is an organization of persons with disabilities in Indonesia, whose focus is on disability rights and policy advocacy. She has been active in various activities related to disability issues, human rights, wheelchair provision system, urban development, and policy advocacy in Indonesia and at the international level. Her experience with research and policy development positions her amongst the most knowledgeable and articulate individuals working at the intersection of public health, community development, policy, and disability. She has since 2013 been an active speaker at the UN Conference of State Parties to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the UN High-Level Forum in the United Nations. She's also the first Indonesian to hold the position of a committee member of the UN CRPD from the period 2019 to 2022. Risna, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Katia, for nice introduction. So first of all, on behalf of Ohana Indonesia, would like to thank you for this very great opportunity to speak at the Global Disability Summit site event in collaboration with Disability Rights Fund, Disability Rights Advocacy Fund, Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, and Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation. So in this side event is a great moment for us to discuss the roles of the Organization of Persons with Disability in the Global South, because they have been advocating to hold the government accountable and implementing disability inclusive development at the country level. Global Disability Summit has been promoting multilateral cooperation that also engaging the Organization of Persons with Disability to voice out loud and to make real change for the persons with disabilities. So it reflects the obligation under the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, especially Article 4.3, I mean, on general obligation, and Article 32 on the international cooperation. So what I learned from the past 2018 Global Disability Summit was an unprecedented engagement and also generated commitment to action that will help deliver the Agenda 2030 vision, I mean the vision of leave no one behind, as well as existing obligation under the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. So I would like to emphasize the general comment of the CRPD about in the development and implementation of legislations and policies to implement the present convention and in other decision-making processes concerning issues relating to persons with disability, state parties shall closely consult with and actively involve persons with disabilities, including children with disability, through their representative organizations. So this explains strongly that very important roles of the OPD are very critical in influencing the policy and development to be more inclusive, accessible, and sustainable. In the context of Indonesian disability rights development, the Indonesian OPD has been extremely active in partnership with the national and subnational government to implement disability inclusion in line with the CRPD and SDGs. So we have several organizations such as Indonesian Mental Health Association, the Indonesian Association of Women with Disability, Ohana, and Center for Accessible Election. With the support of Disability Rights Fund, we are able to support the government to create the commitment for the 2022 Global Disability Summit. So we have several commitments, first coming from the General Election Commission of Republic Indonesia. They committed to eliminate discrimination against persons with disability in the general election, and they would like to increase the Indonesian persons with disability in holding general election in 2024. And the second commitment that we can get from the government is from the Ministry of Human Rights and Law, in pursuit of progressive shift from segregated institutions toward harmonized and community-based support. So this ministry has launched recently the formation of working group on respect, protection, fulfillment, enforcement, and promotion of human rights for persons with psychosocial disability in Indonesia. And the third commitment we also can get from the National Ombudsman Commission. So they are committed to create public service environment that free of discrimination and ensuring rights of persons with disability will be fulfilled into across of public services sector. And the fourth commitment coming from the Ministry of Home Affairs, which will be committed to achieve the fulfillment of the person with disability to register, to have an ID as an Indonesian, so they have an equal access with other citizens in Indonesia. And the fifth commitment is coming from the National Research and Innovation Agency. So they, as part of the independent institution, they would like to committed to strengthen disability research with an intersectional approach toward equal participation of persons with disability. So this high-level lobby and basically negotiation and advocacy that we have been doing with the government is part of the good example from the Global South. And we also would like to thank for the Indonesian Mental Health Association that has been successfully advocating the Ministry of Law and Human Rights, and also the General Election Commission of the Republic Indonesia to make this commitment, because this is not easy. As you know, people with psychosocial disability, they are facing very heavy discrimination in Indonesia in terms of having community-based support. So
thank you so
lastly,
much, Krishna.
Thank you so much. And
Your
I would like to thank you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for that. So our next speaker is a government representative from the government of Indonesia, Vivi Yulaswati. She's the senior advisor to the Minister of National Development, Planning for Social Affairs and Poverty Reduction. Vivi is going to talk about the government of Indonesia's progress towards their GDS commitments of partnering with OPDs. Vivi, as I said, is the senior advisor to the Minister of National Development, Planning for Social Affairs and Poverty Reduction, and her main responsibility is to do analysis and advise the minister on social and poverty reduction related issues and strategies. She also heads the National Secretariat for the Sustainable Development Goals. She is an expert in designing poverty reduction programs, including community-driven development coordination, conditional cash transfer, and some subsidy reforms. She has contributed in the development of the National Social Security System, National Strategy for Financial Inclusion, Big Data for Public Policy Government to Person Payment, and Comprehensive Social Protection Framework. She holds a PhD in Planning and Development from the University of Southern California and a Master's in Urban and Regional Planning from the University of Wisconsin. Sorry, pardon me. So Vivi, over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katia, for a nice introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and also good evening. Thank you very much for having me in this valuable forum as a representative from the government. As you know, in the 2020 Global Economics of Disability report, estimated around 1 billion people, or 15% out of the global population, are disabled. Around 80% of them live in the developing countries. There are around 23 million people with disability live in Indonesia. So after the UNCRPD ratification in 2011, the government of Indonesia gave more attention to disabilities issues. In 2016, for example, the law of person with disability has been revised to align with the UNCRPD principles, which then has transformed the approach of many policy from earlier based only on social or health issues, move forward to the human rights fulfillment to protect as well as to respect. It took more than 2 years for government work together with the DPOs to agree to simplify and enact the 7 implementation regulations. These are needed to guide related sectors and to advance the practical actions for disability policies implementations, as well as to develop action plans at national and province levels. We have also developed the master plan of persons with disabilities for a period of 25 years, which has 7 strategies to focus, including building inclusive data and planning, providing free barrier environment, right protection and access to justice, health, education and training, as well as empowerment and inclusive economy. Based on this, there are more and more collaboration between ministries and local governments with the DPOs to implement the disability right fulfillment, as Risna already mentioned. Some examples that I can add is to sensitizing trainings for staff of financial institutions like banks and ministries, building audits, job fairs for disabilities, finance access for disabled SMEs, developing monitoring instruments, and ensuring persons with disability to be part of the social protection program and access to vaccine. And related to the GDS 2020, one of the commitments that we are working on is to improve the civil registry for persons with disability. The DG of Population and Civil Registration of the Home Affairs Ministry has committed to finalize the position of the electronic ID card of people with disability by 2026. Some pilots have been done in collaboration with the DPO and also some local governments. The government of Indonesia will continue to collaborate with the DPOs in disability policies. As you may know that we are now in a decade of actions toward the achievement of the 2030 agenda. In fact, only 8 years left, while many SDGs targets are disrupted by COVID-19 pandemic. We cannot work in silo if we want to accelerate many of our efforts. So I do hope that the Global Disability Summit will bring us to further collaborate to build forward better, ensure no one left behind, and to improve more inclusive development in society. I thank you. Over to you, Katia.
Much, Vivi. So that was our representative of the government of Indonesia who was talking about how they're working with OPDs to secure GDS commitments. So our next speaker is Rita. So Rita is our next speaker is Rita Kusi Kerema, who is the Executive Director of Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations. Rita is an advocate and social development practitioner with over 14 years of experience in development work, with particular focus on social protection, diversity, and inclusion. She has spent a greater part of her career in promoting inclusion, participation, and representation of persons with disabilities in the Ghanaian society and communities around the world, especially in the Global South, through development policy, influencing, and implementation. She has contributed to national, regional, and global policies, including Ghana's medium-term National Development Plan from 2006 through to 2022, Ghana's Persons with Disabilities Act of 2006, Act 715, Inclusive Education Policy of Ghana, SDGs, and the African Disability Protocol. She has strong technical expertise in leading and managing complex governance structures and networks, bilateral relationships, and strengthening partnerships at all levels. Rita is a member of the Civil Society Reference Group of the 2022 Global Disability Summit. So Rita is going to talk about GFD's work in securing commitments and their role as the co-organizer of the Global Disability Summit 2022. Rita, over to you.
Thank you very much, Katia. I'm speaking on behalf of Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations. Speaking about our experiences as co-organizers of the Global Disability Summit, and as an organization of persons with disabilities, we would want to quickly reflect on this and relate it to the broader theme for today's conversation, which is on resourcing organizations of persons with disabilities, and also reflect on how our experiences were from the 2018 summit to date, and how we have influenced or contributed at the national level and also at the global level. So we are asking ourselves, what does it mean to resource us to effectively contribute or influence the processes of the GDS? To us, it means building our capacity to understand what the Global Summit is and what the commitments are, and how we can help in its effective implementation. Also, understanding how we mobilize organizations of persons with disabilities and our stakeholders to amplify our voices for strategic influence. And again, we have been reflecting on how we influence our government effectively to secure prioritization of the commitments in our national planning and financing. Again, looking at how we get the process to build in the needs and expectations of organizations of persons with disabilities in the national commitment for effective implementation, and also looking at what kind of resources that is really needed by organizations of persons with disabilities. And here we're looking at technical resources, we're looking at data or information, we're looking at financing to support our programs and advocacy work, our human resource and operational needs. Based on these needs, we worked to influence the 2018 commitments. And so from that experience, in partnership with local and international organizations, we were able to get our government to submit some commitments which we think were very laudable for us to monitor. But we realized that organizations of persons with disabilities needed to play a key role to support government's efforts. And so we worked to propose a roadmap for implementation of the previous commitments. We sustained the advocacy for prioritization, monitoring, and reporting on the implementation of the 2018 commitment. But yet, there were some areas that were missed out that were not fully achieved. So in terms of the national budget to fully support the implementation, and that's where the big question comes. How do we influence the 2022, or how did we do it to influence the 2022 process to ensure that disability receives the needed support for implementation locally? And so as organizations of persons with disabilities, and as a member of African Disability Forum representing International Disability Alliance locally, we established a national coordinating team made up of organizations of persons with disabilities and other stakeholders with interest in disability to share information regularly, to plan together, and to influence the national process. We together engage persons with disabilities and our organizations of persons with disabilities at the national, regional, and the community levels to get our thoughts together, to share with government, to influence or to communicate to government what our priorities are as persons with disabilities. And so some of the proposals we made to government included inclusive education, which was part of the 2018 commitment but wasn't met fully, inclusive employment, which was a priority, and we proposed in the adoption of an inclusive education, employment policy. Also, we made a proposal on the need to fast track the review of our Disability Act, which was also a commitment made in 2018, but yet we fully realized. We made a proposal on the adoption of or ratification of the African Disability Protocol. We thought that our government, as a co-host of the 2018 summit, it is important to provide some leadership in terms of adoption of the African Disability Protocol. And so some of these proposals were made. We're yet to have the final commitment that's been presented for the summit, but we are optimistic that based on the engagements, these proposals will not be fully left out. We will have some reflections on them. Again, we needed to increase awareness. Based on our experience from 2018 summit, we thought it's important to increase awareness among organizations of persons with disabilities at the national, regional, and the community levels. And so we had series of activities, both face-to-face and virtual, to engage our members to have a better understanding of the Global Disability Summit and the processes that and the expectations of us after the summit. And in that, we ensured that persons with disabilities have regular interaction with the platforms we had created virtually for interaction, feedback, sharing of information, and we move on to ensure, especially persons with disabilities at the community level, are registering to participate in the various Global Summit activities. So we partnered other stakeholders, including African Disability Forum, to ensure that there is a regional disability summit, which was organized on the 14th, and we ensured persons with disabilities at the regional and the local levels have the opportunity to register. Again, we worked through the global structures to mobilize partnerships for effective implementation of the commitments after the summit. And so we gave deeper meaning to establishing partnerships that will help to effectively implement the commitment. And so for us, looking into the next steps, we're looking at how we bring stakeholders together for a post-summit session to work together to develop a roadmap for implementation of Ghana's commitment. And this, we will be working closely with government to ensure that government provides the lead in this process, and all partners will come together to ensure implementation, because we believe that disability is anyone's business.
Thank you so much, Rita. Thank you so much. So you have heard from all the speakers that we had lined up for today. So at this moment, I'm going to invite my colleague, Chris, to respond to some of the questions that have been raised in the chat box before we also turn over we give an opportunity to the speakers to respond to those that could have been singled out. So Chris, please help us with the questions in the chat box.
Thank you, Katia. This is Christina Parrotson, Technical Assistance Director at DRF and DRAF. Thank you for your comments and questions today. I've forwarded the more specific questions that were directed at speakers directly to them, so they'll respond to you specifically. But more broadly, your contributions in the chat highlight the concern around shrinking donor funding and the preference for funding going to larger national level OPDs. At the same time, what we're hearing are donor priorities around shifting voice and resources to more marginalised groups and young OPDs. So we have two questions, one directed towards the donors. So Penny, I might ask you to respond to the first question. And then the second question is directed to OPDs. And to share the love across the regions, I might invite Gaudence and also Rishna to share their perspectives on the second question. I'll ask both questions and then I'll invite Penny to speak first. So the question for donors is, how will donors like FCDO ensure OPDs at grassroots level, especially young OPDs that represent most marginalised persons, also access funding and benefit from your strategies? So that's your question. I'll just ask the OPD question to give them time to prepare also. So Gaudence and Rishna, question to you. What are the key elements of participatory grant making that are important to OPDs? What do funders need to do differently to enable direct funding to OPDs and grassroots disability advocacy groups? So I'll repeat that second question. What are the key elements of participatory grant making that are important to OPDs? What do funders need to do differently to enable direct funding to OPDs and grassroots disability advocacy groups. Okay, and Penny, I'll give you the floor to answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina, and thank you to all the panelists. Such a rich discussion. It's been brilliant to hear all about the amazing work and the encouraging progress that's happening across the world. So thank you. On the question, I mean, it is exactly what we heard from our consultations, is the need for more funding to go direct to smaller grassroots organisations, and we really do recognise the need for that. I think from my team, it is quite difficult from the UK to fund directly these smaller organisations. We're just, well, for a start, we have some very difficult sort of processes for funding, which some of our partners, implementing partners, will know about. But also, I think because we're quite far removed from country level, there are risks if we try to decide from so far away which organisations should get funding. So that's exactly why we fund through the Disability Rights Fund, and they're the better place to understand the country context and work directly with grassroots organisations. But also what we're going to do is to work through our country posts and really talk to them directly and try and introduce them to local OPDs, and they will hopefully be able to build up a relationship and start funding more directly themselves. So that's our plan, and we're going to develop some guidance to help them to do that and really start a conversation across our global network to encourage that. So I hope that's helpful, and really do emphasize the importance that we are hearing of really direct funding that goes to grassroots organizations. And I do think that is important, and the importance of building capacity as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Penny. So now, Gaudens, can I invite you to speak for maybe 1 minute due to time to talk about what can donors do differently? Thanks, Gaudens, over to you.
Thank you. I think, and this is the case of UNABO, what do donors need to do differently? The first thing is adjusting funding procedures system to make sure that they are flexible to respond to specific needs of specific groups within OPDs, but even within the whole movement of women, youth, and then the second thing is empower OPDs, because as they don't have all those systems that are expected to have in place from the donors, empowering the OPDs also means that strengthening their institutional capacity, but also start small as they grow. And thirdly, there is a need to give them space of exposure, but also learning from the others. Sometimes OPDs, they lack opportunity to interact, to engage with other stakeholders, like we did in a coalition, where UNABO is a part of other civil society organization, and this is giving them a voice. It's also giving them the trust and also opportunity to network and also secure other partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gaudens. This is Chris. Rishna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christine. Yes, I think the key element, it's very important for the OPD that the funding can adjust the country context. I basically agree with what Penny said about we need to adjust the situation at the country level, how we can support the OPD based on the needs of their advocacy. And also the funding can do differently when they also do consultation and inform people with disability on how to support them. So I have to I'll take a good example what the DRF has been doing around the world. I think it's very good that they have a dialogue with the OPD based on their country level, and also using our language, the Indonesian language, to apply the proposal. And it's extremely helped us to support the OPD at the grassroots level, to understand what the fundings would like to support and what the key message that we can deliver, based on the funding expectation. So I think this is kind of a good example that I can share about how we can adjusting the local context, including giving reasonable accommodation to address the OPDs using their local language to apply the proposal. And I really appreciate that this has been done by the DRF, and maybe it also can apply to other donors. Thank you.
This is Chris. Thank you very much, Visma, and to Gaudence and to Penny for answering the comments, the questions in the comments. So over to Katia.
So much, Chris, for helping us to moderate the questions. And so we have come to the end of our discussion. Thank you so much to each one of you that took time to join, and for all the questions that have been all the questions and comments that have been put in the chat box, and we will follow up to respond to some of you individually. But if you want to learn more about the DRF work, we have shared links in the chat box, and also the links to some of our OPDs that we're speaking today, and also our development partners that we're speaking today. The links have been shared, and so you can learn more about their work and also their DRF work in funding OPDs in the Global South. So this has been a discussion on what works in terms of resourcing OPDs in the Global South to secure global disability commitments and also to implement them. We thank you so much for all of you that took time. Like I said in my opening remarks, our PUD fund is always open for governments, donors, and other organizations to join in an effort to strengthen the voice of persons with disabilities or organizations of persons with disabilities at the grassroots, who themselves have the experience and the knowledge of the local context. This can only be done with the concerted efforts of all the development partners if they come together and contribute to this cause. If you have any further questions, please feel free to write to us using the information that was shared in the chat box. Thank you so much, and looking forward to welcoming you all in the next to our next discussion, whenever it will be.